When Michael heard Emily utter the words, it felt as if the ground beneath him shifted. She stood before him in their dimly lit apartment, her hazel eyes meeting his with a mixture of resolve and nervousness. "I'm pregnant," she said softly. Michael's mind raced, his emotions swirling in a storm of joy, confusion, and fear. They had been together for just 6 months, a whirlwind romance full of excitement, but not the kind of solid foundation he'd imagined for building a family. Before he could respond, Emily continued, her voice steady. "We need to get married. My parents, they're old-fashioned, and I can't let them worry." The days that followed were a blur of rushed decisions and practical arrangements. A small wedding was planned at her parents' home, devoid of the romance Michael had envisioned for such an important day. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had signed a contract rather than exchanged vows. Afterward, they moved into a modest apartment, furnishing it with second-hand furniture and borrowed optimism. Michael tried to focus on the positives. He pictured lazy Sunday mornings filled with laughter, the smell of pancakes wafting through the air, and the sound of a child's giggles echoing through their home. But as weeks turned into months, cracks began to form in the picture-perfect life he had imagined. At first, it was the little things. Emily would snap at him for leaving dishes in the sink or forgetting to take out the trash. "Michael, how many times do I have to remind you?" she huffed one evening as he sat on the couch, exhausted from work. "I'll do it," he replied wearily, but his words seemed to fall on deaf ears. "You always say that, but it never happens." Her tone grew sharper with each passing day, turning small annoyances into full-blown arguments. Michael found himself walking on eggshells, trying to avoid conflicts, but the tension in their home only seemed to grow. The loneliness crept in, a silent companion that followed him everywhere. Michael sought solace in his best friend Adam, whose humor and laid-back attitude provided a temporary escape. "You're not yourself, man," Adam said one night over beers. "What's going on?" Michael shrugged, unable to put his feelings into words. "Whatever it is," Adam continued, "don't let it eat you alive. You deserve to be happy." One evening, while tidying the bedroom, Michael stumbled upon a small notebook tucked away in Emily's drawer. At first he thought nothing of it, but as he flipped through the pages, his stomach twisted in knots. Scrawled across multiple pages were dates and times, alongside a single name. Jacob. Michael's mind raced with questions. Who was Jacob? Why was Emily keeping a record of her meetings with him? He couldn't bring himself to confront her. Not yet. Instead, he began to watch her more closely, piecing together a puzzle he wasn't sure he wanted to solve. Emily's behavior only fueled his suspicions. She began coming home late, her explanations vague. Her phone, once casually left on the kitchen counter, was now always within her grasp. And then there was the way she seemed to light up when she thought he wasn't looking, as if she were carrying a secret she didn't dare share. Michael decided he needed answers. One evening, he followed her. Emily arrived at a small cafe on the other side of town, her demeanor relaxed and carefree. Michael parked a safe distance away and watched as she entered. Moments later, a man joined her. A man he could only assume was Jacob. They embraced warmly, and Emily's face lit up in a way Michael hadn't seen in months. He sat frozen in his car, watching as they laughed and talked like old friends, their connection undeniable. When Emily returned home later that night, Michael was waiting for her in the living room. "Where were you?" he asked, his voice cold. "Out with friends," she replied, her tone light but her eyes avoiding his. "With Jacob?" Her face turned pale, and for a moment she seemed at a loss for words. Finally, she sank onto the couch, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "Michael, I didn't want you to find out like this." "How long?" His voice cracked, the weight of betrayal already settling in his chest. Emily's voice was barely a whisper, since before we got married. The confession hit Michael like a punch to the gut. Everything, their rushed wedding, their fragile plans for the future, was built on a lie. In the days that followed, Michael moved out of their apartment and into Adam's spare room. The betrayal gnawed at him, but Adam's words offered a glimmer of hope. He came through the gates and asked, "She doesn't define you," Adam said one night. "This could be your chance to start fresh." Michael nodded, though the pain still lingered. When the divorce papers arrived weeks later, Michael signed them without hesitation. He wasn't losing a wife. He was regaining himself. And as he walked away from the chapter that had nearly broken him, he allowed himself to hope for a brighter tomorrow.